This is episode 122 of the Death to Tyrants podcast.
The crushing weight of the tyrant's passage had left nothing unmarked.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram wrath. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back once again. How are you? This is the Death to Tyrants podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Austin, Texas, where I didn't have to go far for today's guest. Another gentleman right here in Austin, Texas. The most badass guest I've ever had on the show. There's no doubt about that. For those of you who know who he is, I know you agree. I've got Tim Kennedy here on the show today, and I'm bringing Tim on to, we got to cover a lot of political things, but one of the cool things that he does, he owns a company called Sheepdog Response, and basically it empowers people to protect and preserve not only their life, but the people around them, especially their families' lives. And so I think that's important with everything that's going on in the world today, certainly here in the United States, and I don't think it's going to get any more calm or tame here in the next couple of months. And judging by the number of guns flying off the shelves, I think most people would agree with that. So we get into that, his Sheepdog Response class, and he teaches this course all over. Multiple guys that work for him teach these courses. And honestly, I think I'm going to do it. It looks really cool. And I think he sells it quite well. He didn't have to, it shouldn't be hard to sell it, right? I mean, look at the news and you'll see. So we get into that. We get into his politics. He is a self-described libertarian. And we get into a litany of issues. And so I won't waste your time much longer. If I wanted to read off every accomplishment that Tim Kennedy has behind him, it would take forever. But I will tell you this, Tim Kennedy is a retired mixed martial artist, a professional from 2001 until 2016. He has fought in the UFC, Strikeforce, the WEC, Show MMA, HD Net Fights, and represented the Chicago Bears in the IFL. Kennedy is one of the few fighters to simultaneously serve in the United States Army while also fighting professionally. Luckily, he's not here to fight. He's here to chat with us. Right here, I have the venerable Tim Kennedy. Tim, welcome, and thanks for some of your time.
My pleasure.
Well, we could do really multiple episodes on just some of the accomplishments that you've had in your life. And I want to get to several topics with you. So just to start, for the few people listening that might not be aware of your story, kind of give a brief overview of the Tim Kennedy story for us.
Ooh, okay. I'll do it in 30 seconds. I was a weird, smart kid, so I graduated from high school really early, and I started college really early. So when I was 19, I was finishing up my undergrad, and I had already gone to a fire academy and an EMT school to then be a firefighter in Atascadero, California, and then went to the police academy at 21 while I was in grad school. And then 9/11 happened while I was in grad school, and I enlisted in the Army as a Green Beret. And I've been doing that job as a Special Forces operator for the past 16 years. During that time, I was fighting professionally. So I fought for the UFC, Strikeforce, IFL. I have a black belt in a few different martial arts, but I fought for the world title a couple of times. And towards the end of my career, I was doing more, acting. And so I had my own show on Discovery Channel, on History Channel, and then competed in a bunch of different shooting shows on like Spike, and I don't even remember this other channel before it got canceled. So I'm in the middle of writing a book. I'm now a master sergeant in the U.S. Army Special Forces, and I'm still competing in everything that I can.
And you're doing the Sheepdog courses here in Austin, correct? Well, all over the place, I guess, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the companies, while I was fighting, I was still in the military, so I didn't need any of my fight money, but I was fighting for world titles. So it was like a good business to be in. So I take all of my fight money and I would just invest them in companies. So now, 17 years removed from fighting, and I own a half a dozen companies, and one of them is Sheepdog Response, which is a defensive tactics training company. And we go all over the world teaching people how to protect themselves.
Well, this I don't know if this is maybe just stereotypical of, because the news cycle is crazy, but it seems to me like I've not seen a better time for someone to enroll in a course like that. Is that your thoughts too, or is it something you'd say this is always vitally important, no matter what time it is?
That's a great question. One of the core values, the tenets of special forces, is that you cannot train somebody about how to react in a crisis in a time of crisis. So while we're in the middle of a pandemic and civil unrest, while I applaud, I guess the 7 million new gun owners that have never bought a gun before, welcome to gun ownership. And I'm super excited, but you need to go get trained right now. And to everybody else that has been training, I tip my hat and I give you a little wink of approval, because it's funny. We're living in the first time, I think, in our lives where the guy that was kind of a prepper is now kind of the cool guy.
Yeah.
Because he was the one that had things figured out, right? And where people are running to the grocery store to fight over toilet paper, that homeboy is just kicking back with his feet up on the desk being like, oh, you guys want some eggs? I got chickens in my backyard, So yeah, anytime is a good time to get into these courses. But right now, when we're moving towards a very scary contested election, when a whole bunch of cities, to include our city here in Austin, have been looted and rioted, there's no better time than now to start training.
Well, what would, I guess, for the average man or woman listening, and they're thinking, well, I don't know if that really is for me. I'm not some kind of badass. I'm not a gym rat or something. What would your average person gain from this course? And who is it aimed at, I suppose?
And so the thing that you gain is freedom from living in fear, freedom from, concern. I just think about while Corona, whatever you call it, the COVID-19, while that was in the peak and everybody is worried, what happens if my power shuts off? Or what happens if I go to the grocery store and people start fighting over water? What happens if the delivery people start striking and there's no food on the shelves? And I know the vast majority of Americans were scared. And, if you live in Seattle, if you live in Minneapolis, if you live in Portland, if you live in LA, if you live in Chicago, Baltimore, Detroit, the list goes on and on, where civil unrest has been spreading like a cancer. You've been worried. Here in Austin, about a month ago, we received intelligence that a huge group of people were planning a violent protest. And, I had countless friends call me from downtown, what should I do? You should barricade your stuff up and you should leave, because there's nothing that you can do. You're not trained. You're not prepared. There's nothing that you can do at this juncture too late in the game to be ready for this. And that's a scary place to be. So what do you gain, to answer your question in a short soundbite, is you gain freedom from fear. There's not been a moment in my household with my wife and my 4 children where we're like, oh no, are we in danger? Are we going to have food? Are we going to have water? Is somebody going to come into our house and take our stuff? That never even existed. You could walk up to my 5-year-old and be like, hey man, how's it going? He's like, hey, go chase a chicken with me? Or we've 8,000 gallons of water, of purified water. So training provides you confidence and the knowledge to be able to be prepared for what's coming. And who can get trained is anyone. You do not need my resume, and nobody that comes to my course has that resume. But if you come to this course, the people that are teaching you have my resume, every single one of them. You're like, wait, you're in Delta Force for 23 years? Or oh, you're just a sergeant major in the Army that just got back from a war zone and you're teaching me how to put on a tourniquet. How many of these tourniquets have you put on in real life? Oh, you can't even count the number of tourniquets you have applied to a human being that has been shot. That's kind of frightening in and of itself, but also really freaking cool that you're teaching me how to do this. And that's all of the instructors are just the most exemplary, unbelievable heroes that have dedicated their lives to these ideas of living free. And, we believe that freedom is always on the far side of hard work. You might be out of shape. You might be never held a gun in your life. No worries. Everybody starts somewhere. You start eating an elephant one bite at a time. And I think once you go down this path, once you start that journey, of realizing that you have the individual responsibility to protect yourself and yours, it is the most freeing thing to live in confidence knowing that you're set.
You said we all know this about you, but you did MMA professionally and of course, the long military career. I want to ask, obviously, there's many lessons that you probably took from each aspects of your life in this regard. What are some that are different between MMA fighting and the military that you learned, some life lessons and some takeaways?
There's a lot of similarities. I think there's more similarities than there are differences, from, firefighting to police to the military to fighting. I've had a very disciplined, regimented approach to getting things done. And I think externally, with somebody outside looking in, they're like, man, is that a fun life where, you're up early, before the rooster crows? Like I'm out there doing work, getting in 1 or 2 workouts. I promise I see my kids more than anybody else sees their kids. I absolutely get more time with my wife because I'm disciplined and I'm able to kind of organize and delegate tasks to my team. It provides freedom of maneuver, and that freedom, I take every opportunity I can. Today had a crushing cardio workout, got to go do some grappling training. I've been looking at my training calendar for the next 6 weeks about where I'm getting in what, knowing that I'm shooting all next week. And it provides, the thing that really crosses over across all of those occupations is time management and discipline.
Well, we got to get into this too. How would you describe yourself politically?
I say I'm a libertarian, but I'm a strict constitutionalist. Actually, right here in front of me, in my hand, is the United States Constitution. I guess I'm socially pretty progressive, like legalization of marijuana and the death sentence. Sure. And, fiscally, I'm pretty conservative, but I'm a freedom first guy in every imaginable way. Like, I don't want anybody telling me what to do in anything, as long as the things that I do don't negatively affect anyone else. So I guess I'm a libertarian, independent. That is, I don't know, middle. I'm middle.
Okay. One of the things that's kind of waken a lot of people up, I think, from the conversations I've had lately is just the whole lockdown thing, this COVID moment, some of the chaos that's come from that. What are your thoughts on the government disallowing people to go to work when this whole thing started, and even to congregate in crowds and groups in the name of safety from the coronavirus?
Yeah. So I don't think, you said the government to disallow you to do that. They don't have that right.
Right.
They've never had that right. And the only reason that happened is we allowed it to happen. I never abided by any of those things. I never shut down any of my businesses. I never, laid off or furloughed any of my employees. I never told them not to come to work. I never shut down my websites. I never stopped training. I was limited in the venues I was able to use for training because of COVID, because those people were caving and cowering to governments. I believe that right now, people wonder, what would I do during the Holocaust? What would I have done during World War II, during the Civil War? Well, you just did it, Yes. If you caved and cowered and allowed these governments to do these things, whether it's a local mayor, a city council, a state representative, a governor, you just got a little snapshot, right? Like if you're calling in on your neighbor that's not wearing a mask, if there was a little Jew hiding behind a fake wall, you would have given her up.
Yes.
And shame on you.
Yeah, that touches upon something I was going to ask, because one of the shocking things, and I almost feel naive at this point for the fact that it was so shocking. Were you surprised at how easy it was for the government to get so much compliance from most societies, honestly, across the globe, to take such drastic measures so quickly? I still see people by themselves in their car with a mask on. Did that surprise you?
Man, it didn't surprise me. Like the never waste a good crisis. That's that's an expression that comes from the Great Recession. Sir Winston Churchill even said it, that the government should never let a good crisis go to waste.
Mm-hmm.
And, he said that in the mid-40s, moving into World War II. So it has happened time and time again. And, from 9/11, when we passed the Patriot Act, what was the single most intrusive into the civil liberties of privacy for an American in history. And now with COVID, there weren't a lot of laws that were passed. But what did happen was they shaped how our culture will respond to the government telling them what to do. We're rebels, right? Americans.
Yes.
We have always been rebels. We have, the British were like, hey, you can't have guns and we're going to tax you on with tea. And we're like, we're going to shoot you and send you back to the island across the Atlantic. And we're like, Germany, fascism's on the rise. And we're like, the Jews suck. We want to gas them all. And we're like, so about that, we're just not going to let that happen. And we're going to come across this ocean and kick your ass. So no, I wasn't surprised, because I think we have become a soft, weak-spined, lazy society. And a weak, lazy person is easy to manipulate and to mold into whatever you want. Like, they're not going to get off their couch. They're not going to stop playing their video games. They're not going to stop the Twitch streaming. And, you go back 10 years where they took shop and mechanic out of public school, and they, stopped the Pledge of Allegiance, and you see it slowly eroding the base and foundation of what it means to be an American. And to me, an American is still this strong, powerful, freedom fighting rebel. But the only way that you can be free and individual is to be individually self-sufficient and have the responsibility as an individual to be the strongest, fastest, best version of yourself, the most successful. When you look at the people that crafted the Declaration of Independence and wrote the amendments to the Constitution, those are very, very successful people. Like, you look at George Washington, you're like, holy crap, that's a frightening man. Thomas Jefferson, not even overlooking their flaws, and there were a lot of them, especially if we hold them to current day standards, they were the most accomplished humans on the planet. And they were the ones that were crafting the ideas about what it meant to be an American.
Yeah, and it's interesting that of all generations, we're faced now with the one where there's people, younger people, people my age, unfortunately, that kind of see this situation, the quote unquote COVID moment, and they think the heroes are the ones that stay in their house, sitting on the couch, and the selfish assholes, so to speak, are the people going to work, trying to live their lives. And they're sitting in going, we're the heroes here. We're doing the real work, while you guys go out and spread this disease and keep this going. And, so nothing ever gets better. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, I've actually seen that attitude, but it's an ignorant, selfish attitude. And it's not rooted or founded in truth.
Right.
Like, the fact that Ellen DeGeneres can sit at home and broadcast to her millions and millions of fans and not lose money, that's incredible. And I commend her for being able to be so selfless, to be able to wear a mask and to self-isolate and self-quarantine. A cop can't do that. A waste disposal guy can't do that. The guy that is putting water into Ellen's house and running the power to her home, to the Wi-Fi that she's streaming with, like, they can't do that. Like, they have to work. Not only do they have to work to provide those essential utilities to the individual, but if they didn't work, their families would starve. And being a guy that has seen people that starve to death, and I travel to these horrific places on the planet that none of these utilities exist. There is no clean water. There is no real power. There is no real food. And seeing the disease and the absolute depression of not just the individual, but the entire society from really nobody working. It's not an option, and it's not the American way. And if you think that a government can tell me to not work and not put food on my family's table, they can go kiss my ass, right? Like that, hey, we'd like you to not work so you can foreclose on your house and you can be evicted and you can be homeless. Yeah, I mean, that's not an option. In California, for example, where the salons were closed, and you see these cries, these pleas by the individual saying, like, I need to open my salon because my family is being supported by my business. And we're like, nope, sorry, that's not going to really work out for us because, I don't know how you could transmit corona via cutting someone's hair, but we're just not going to let you open. The only way to fight that is a unified, rebellious voice of everyone saying, oh, well, we're going to open our businesses anyways. You don't have the right to do that. And that's the way we've always done it. And, it is written, let me this handy dandy constitution that I have right here. When you go to that First Amendment, Article 1, it's super clear. We get to tell the government to go kiss our ass, especially when it comes to what we can say and how we can do it. As long as if I'm doing it peacefully and me opening my business is peaceful, I'm not burning something down. I'm not tearing something down. I'm not hurting anyone. We have lots of options there.
Yes. Well, apparently burning the stuff down these days is called peaceful from if you watch CNN. A lot of people now are finding themselves kind of at a crossroads mentally and probably thinking about courses like Sheepdog, because regular people, you're seeing these videos of people at restaurants like in Rochester, New York. The other day I saw this, and there's protesters marching into the restaurants and either trying to force someone to raise their fist in the air and quote unquote solidarity with the cause, or knocking stuff off the tables and saying basically no justice, no peace, and you're not going to live in happiness as long as we have this political issue that we want to fight. A lot of people are going, what would I do in that situation? Is it my family? Do I protect them? Do I leave? Do I raise a fight here? Out of curiosity, what would you do if you found yourself in that situation?
Do you know who August Lamps Mesmer is? It's a funny last name. Land Messer. There's an iconic photo of the Nazi party. Everyone's saluting Hitler.
Yes.
I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people.
Yep.
But what you see is August.
Yes.
Is standing there in the middle with his arms crossed with this absolute disdain on his face. Like, you cannot miss it. But that is a man that is not going to cower, that is not going to cave, that's not going to bend. And you find out that he has relatives that are Jews. And he recognized that just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that it's right? Like, can I stand in solidarity and believe that Black Lives Matter? 100%. Do you think that you can walk up to me with a mob of people and tell me to raise my fist in the air to show solidarity to you? No. Kiss my ass, right? We're back to that thing again. Like, the beautiful thing about the First Amendment is that we're able to express our freedom of speech willingly and freely. If somebody is making you do it, it is not freely. So should you, John Hackelman, one of my old kickboxing coaches from San Luis Obispo, he ran the pit, famed coach of Chuck Liddell. Mm-hmm. We just talked about this yesterday. He said, well, what would you do? And I said, well, first of all, I wouldn't be there. Right before I take my wife's, my anniversary is coming up, and I'm of course going to take her to have a really great weekend, stay at a really nice hotel, go to really nice restaurants. You don't think that I'm doing all the planning to make sure that the places that we go are going to be safe, that I'm looking at all the Antifa chat channels where, like, if she wants to dress nice, she wants to stay at a nice place that's going to be downtown. Does that mean that I'm going to, sorry, honey, we're going to have to go out to the country for our anniversary? I like the country, but sorry, this is just the way it is because of the way the world is spinning right now. No, of course not. I'm going to make sure that she has a special day, special weekend, special anniversary. But that doesn't mean that I get the time off, that I don't get to make sure that everything is safe. Situational awareness is not a responsive thing. It is not like I'm sitting here and I see a threat and now I'm thinking about what that threat's going to be doing. And that thing that I thought could be a threat then becomes a threat. Oh, you were way too late, right? Situational awareness is being way ahead of anything that is going to happen. I argue that had there been trained observers at the Boston finish line when a sketchy dude wearing a black sweater with the hood pulled up over his head takes off his backpack and sets it down at the finish line, somebody would be like, hey, son, come back over here and pick this bag up before I drag your face across the cement to whatever's in here. That's the attitude. That sounds kind of violent and visceral, but that's the approach that I take to situational awareness, because my life and my family's life, and more importantly, my wife and kids' lives are at stake if I'm the one not doing the due diligence to ensure their safety. Back to individual responsibility. So, yes, the only way that you can be prepared for these situations is through training. I was not born with the ability to look out. I'm not saying I'm Jason Bourne. I'm saying, like, well, at this altitude, I can, run flat out for 4 minutes, and I've memorized every single license plate in the parking lot, and I know the best place to find a gun. I know the guy that's kind of heavy sitting at the bars is pretty good with his hands. Like, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can condition your mind to be able to function more effectively and efficiently, especially under stressful situations, if you put in the work ahead of time. You're not going to rise to the occasion. You're only going to fall to your level of training. And whatever that level of training is, that is going to determine success and failure when you're in a time of crisis.
Let me tell you guys about a new sponsor of the show, and that is National Caviar Magazine. These guys are hilarious. I think you guys are going to enjoy their online magazine as well as their associated podcast called National Caviar's Boomercast. Their motto is funny first and truth last. I was looking across their website at the various articles and stumbled across my penis doubled in size after coronavirus. So at least, I could relate to one of their articles. The entire point of their website and podcast is to entertain you. At this point, you probably sometimes want a break from the toxic news cycle and just you want to enjoy a hilarious spin on current events. Well, the best part over at National Caviar's magazine, it's all done with a subtle, liberty-minded perspective because at this point, I'm sure, like myself, you guys are tired of the same old generic left-wing comedy news shows. They're also blue-pilled at this point. It's hard to even look their direction. Well, over at National Caviar magazine, you will find actual humorous spins on the news, and it won't be so bogged down in left-wing talking points. And like I mentioned, they've got National Caviar's The Boomercast podcast. It's a bi-weekly show focusing on topics ranging from current events, bizarre unheard news, and interviews with weekly guests. Go see all of it over at nationalcaviar.com and let them know we sent you. Let's get back to the show. When you see these Antifa types destroying businesses and trying to gang up on normal people, do you see something specifically wrong with that type of person? Do you think of it as a deep-seated issue or just some kind of average street thug? When you see guys like that, what do you think?
I pity them. I did an Instagram post about my general observations of, I took Andy No, he is a journalist in Portland, Oregon, a real neat guy. He's a small statured Asian, he's gay, that was targeted by Antifa. He got beat up, had cement smashed against him. Anyways, he does these really, I guess they're not funny, they're kind of tragic, daily postings of people that were arrested in Portland for rioting, looting. And I just went through there and I grabbed just photo after photo. I was not curating what the photos look like. I just grabbed all of the photos.
Yes.
And I took like 25 of them and I put them all together and they all look like the same pathetic person.
Yes.
Like they're unhealthy. They clearly have bad hygiene. They have bad diets. Their eyes are sunken in. They look like they're high. Like I'm not sure if you can say that somebody looks like they have mental health issues, but they look like they have mental health issues. So like first, being a healthy, strong, successful person, I think it would be disgusting to be like, look at that pathetic, gross person. So when I say I pity them, it's like I want to help them, but don't mistake the kindness for weakness, where if 10 of them tried to surround me, like I'm going to go medieval pretty fast. Like lead pipes are coming out of my eyeballs before I start smashing skulls. But the kindness is recognizing that they need help, right? They may not have any other options. Like they may have been living in their mom's basement their entire life. Like they might have chosen the most useless degree in their undergraduate and they thought that feminist studies is going to help them in life. And now they can't get a job and they're in the middle of a pandemic and, some rapist gets shot by the cops. And now you have an opportunity to go and burn down your city and then create another generation of poverty because of your actions. So I enumerated, I was trying to be funny, but they're also kind of tragic. And I think I listed like 10 different things about the protester / rioter / looter / criminal. And all of them shared all of these general characteristics that were kind of tragic.
What do you say to those on the left that are now screaming about toxic masculinity and we're raising our kids incorrectly, and that's led to this giant toxic patriarchal society. What do you say to those people?
I mean, I believe in toxic masculinity. I think a rapist is a toxic, disgusting, despicable human. Masculinity is the man that is going to stand up and fight that kind of evil. That's not toxic. That's beautiful. Masculinity is rooted in kindness and compassion and love, and the position of wanting to protect. It's not out of a toxic, manly alpha thing. It's like, oh, I need to know that I'm in control of everything, that my wife and my kids are going to be safe. So like, I need a little extra hair on my chest and maybe a few extra scars on my hand. It's like, no. I love my family. I love my wife and I love my kids. And because of that, I'm going to ensure that they're safe and they're going to safe schools, and that if during an anniversary weekend we are safe, or during a Labor Day weekend, we're going to a place and doing things that they're going to be safe. And this has been a common tactic. I don't like to say the left or progressive because the democratic ideas have had some really neat, great things, and like casting a negative shadow over all of it. But one of the tactics that's been used, calling Antifa, it's like anti-fascist.
Yeah.
So if you speak out against Antifa, what, are you for fascists? Right. Are you a white supremacist?
Right.
No, absolutely not. That's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. It's like, Black Lives Matter. If you don't support the organization Black Lives Matter, does that mean that you're against Black lives? No, I can absolutely be for Black lives and believe that they matter, but also realize that that is a Marxist organization that is trying to erode the beauty things that construct our society and govern why we became the most prosperous, successful nation on the planet.
Yes.
So the same thing with toxic masculinity. Like, if you are for masculinity, then of course you have to recognize that those elements are toxic. And I think you can fight and push back directly using that same vernacular, where we have to define what that is and not let them control the narrative and definition. So masculinity is a beautiful thing, as is being feminine. Femininity is also, it is not a weakness, and there's nothing toxic about it. It is different than masculinity, but it is beautiful in its own way. And they both have their own strengths and they both have their own assets. So yeah, there's another opportunity where they can kiss my ass.
Do you see Donald Trump as a sort of break to some of this madness that's being, pushed upon society? Does he represent like a pumping of the brakes, a little bit of a force against some of this stuff?
Ooh. I mean, yes, but with him comes so much baggage. Like, if we're talking about toxic masculinity, the things that he says are things that I would never allow my son to say about a woman. He gets on Twitter and, that's such an ugly, despicable, gross, uneducated position that this woman has. You're like, man, like, you could say that a different way. You could be like, this lady obviously didn't do her research into this thing that she's talking about, and here's why she's incorrect. That's way different than, calling somebody ugly or a bunch of ugly words that you don't need to use. So yes, he's a break, but almost like a sideshow break. And I don't know if a sideshow is ever good coming from a president.
Yeah, it's well, needless to say, it's going to be interesting in November. One of the things I find interesting of it is a lot of people are just, your average person's going, if Trump wins, there's going to be riots. I don't hear many people say, well, if Biden wins, the right's going to go out and burn down cities.
No, we have jobs. I don't have time to go riot. I believe in people's right to protest, and I think it's kind of written in our nature, in our country's fabric. Going all 1774. You want to know how we got to 1776? It was protesting, and it started peaceful, and then we had a pretty bloody day, and then it went from peaceful to not peaceful pretty fast. And now, November comes around, Trump gets elected. Yes, cities are going to burn, and it's horrible that we're acknowledging that. And I almost feel by saying that out loud, it's accepting what's going to come. But that's just me from my kind of strategic defensive tactics mind. I'm preparing for that because that's what I think is going to happen. Biden wins. Nah, man. Like somebody that didn't vote for Biden is too busy working on an oil rig to have time to go protest or to burn something down because he also has to make sure that all the cars have gasoline.
Right.
And that's what his industry does. So it's a sad difference in kind of the parties.
Mm-hmm.
I did a questionnaire, a survey on my Twitter. I said, if you put a Trump sign in your yard, do you think that you will be more likely to become a victim of vandalism? And 90% said yes. And I said, if you put a Biden sign, exact same question, but with a Biden sign, and 90% said no. And I think that's accurate, where, you don't see somebody walking down the street wearing a Biden hat and somebody accosts him or somebody rips it off his head or somebody calls him white supremacist or tries to hit him.
Right.
But if somebody's walking down the street with a MAGA hat, there's a good chance that person is going to be assaulted. And I don't know why that is. It's sad. And what's even more sad is that when that person is assaulted, the rest of the left doesn't condemn the actions of the person that assaulted
that
victim.
Right.
And so by not doing that, you're complicit. You're actually encouraging the next thing to happen. Right. So if I saw someone, let's say I'm in Austin, Texas, and I'm walking down the road and there is somebody wearing a burqa and a couple of kids are like, hey, assalamu alaikum, like getting up in this, this young woman's face and screaming racist, bigot things to her. Do you not think that I'm going to go up and stuff those two kids up? Absolutely. I'm not going to let that happen. Somebody was wearing a Biden hat or walking down the street being like, Biden's going to be the greatest president. And it would never happen because that's not how I think the right operates. But a bunch of people start accosting that person the way that I think you would do the same thing, I would, and all of my friends would. Like, we would go up and be like, I don't know what you guys think you're doing, but this person 100% has a right to walk down the street wearing a Biden stand, right or wrong.
Right.
Whether you agree with it or don't, you guys need to find something else to do, and it better be constructive. And if I see you get near this person again, this interaction will not go as pleasantly. Go your way.
I want to ask you I got a few more for you. As a longtime military person, I've got to ask you this. Trump seems to have good instincts on wanting to bring troops back home in some of these wars. And a lot of us in the libertarian world are saying, well, he didn't start another one. And I guess that's how low the bar has been set by previous presidents. As a military person, would you like to see these wars ended and your brothers brought back home? What are your thoughts on that?
Afghanistan is never going to be a place that can be ruled. It's never going to be a place that is going to be occupied. It has been, it is since Genghis Khan, a place that will always resist anything else besides the tribalism that they exist in. There's nothing else that can happen besides the way that it is. And, that's warlords and district and regional governance. Like there's not going to be. So we have been spinning our wheels there for a long time. I would love to have, as we get out of Afghanistan, a thing in place where they realize if they start a training camp for the next 9/11, they know we're going to come in and kill everyone. And we have been phasing out of Iraq, but we have to do it in a way, just like the creation of ISIS. If you just pull out of something and you leave a void, evil always fills that void. Whether it's in Lebanon or Somalia or Iraq or Afghanistan, there has to be governance in place for that to work. Otherwise, we're going to have another 9/11, and we're going to have to go drop a bunch more bombs and spend another $17 trillion on another 20-year war. And I sure as heck don't want that.
All right. Well, for my listeners that find inspiration and all of these things you've accomplished throughout your life, what advice in closing here would you give in terms of, 2020 and how crazy things have become? Is there a way to find discipline and feel centered, maybe in what a lot of people feel like they're in the midst of chaos, what advice would you give?
Man, train. Everything will be worse and everything will get worse if you don't do anything. Like if you sit in your house and you turn on the TV and you watch the nonstop cycle of hate, pain, and intentional separation from our community, like they want us to be divided. And that divisiveness is strategically planted in every moment of everything that you watch. Turn off the TV, go outside and work out, go to work and start working, go open your salon. Everything will get better because everything you want is on the far side of hard work. Freedom, security, financial freedom, safety. And like you have to believe in that. I know it sounds like a leap of faith, but once you start down that road, it is the most freeing thing ever to not live in fear.
Wow. Well, also go ahead and I'll give you the floor to plug anything you'd like, social media presence, your classes, anything you got that you want people to know about.
Yeah, everything for me on social media is Tim Kennedy MMA, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think my daughter even set up like a Snapchat thing. I don't want to talk about that on TikTok. Sheepdog Response, I think everybody needs to go to the level 1 course. It is like the basic, you're going to learn the basic fundamentals of marksmanship about how to use a weapon. You're going to learn the basics of self-defense, and you're going to learn the basics of situational awareness. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of fancy wazoo classes of singleton security and vehicle CQB, standing up. But the basics of like what you need to know to keep you and your family safe, check out sheepdogresponse.com and just start that journey.
Excellent. Tim Kennedy, thank you so much for joining us here on Death to Tyrants.
My pleasure.
I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Tim Kennedy. What a inspirational guy. And I think a lot of the words of advice that he gave there are something you should take to heart and think about. I don't think he's wrong, that's for sure. So thank you once again, Tim Kennedy. As for us here on Death to Tyrants, we got new shirts, we got a new website, we've got these great sponsors, and I've got a lot of new listeners. So thank you guys for the downloads. If you want, go over there on iTunes, leave a rating and a review. It can only help, right? I mean, of course, if you're going to say something nice. If you want to say something mean, I guess go ahead. I'll see that too. Anyway, the website is deathtotyrantspodcast.com. That's got the store on there. It's got all my social media links. That is kind of the one-stop shop. And so also, it's got the Patreon link on there, which you can donate. You can be a Patreon donator to this show. All it takes is $1 a month, and you get access to the exclusive Patreon episodes. And that's at patreon.com/deathtotyrants. That's about all I got. Everything's on that website. Go visit our sponsors. Support these small businesses that support a podcast like this one. I think that's super cool. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I will talk to you soon.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram wrath. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Death to Tyrants podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.